Perfect. Well, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to the information session on PXT Select. I'm Tatiana St. Germain with Great People Management, and I help organizations select, develop, and keep great people. I believe great people are not born, they're made. You have to find their greatness and put them in positions where they can use their greatness, and then they will achieve great results. I really am passionate about people, and that's part of the reason why I've been in the assessment industry for almost 20 years, researching and identifying some of the best assessment tools that I can use with my clients to help them attract and develop people and put the right people in the right positions. This webinar is going to be a little different from some of the others you might have attended because I'm not going to be talking about strategies or tips and tricks and pain points. We're just going to be talking about PXT Select. This is truly a demonstration of the tool. So now that you've possibly learned some of the strategies or you have some HR initiatives going on in your organization, you can look at this PXT Select tool and see if this might be something that's going to be useful for you. I am an executive coach and assessment expert and talent advisor to companies large and small, Vista's trusted partner, executive talent partner. And so you can see that I partner with multiple organizations, and sometimes if I cannot help you, maybe some of the people in my network can help you. So definitely connect with me and use me as a resource. All right, let's see if we can progress through the slides. Well, trying to. All right. Here we go. The only thing I'm going to talk about before I jump into the assessment itself, the demonstration of how it works and what it does, I wanted to set the stage. Why do we even need a PXT assessment? This goes back to the organizational priorities, especially now when the labor markets are tight. We're going through US and possibly global recession. We really need to get the best out of every person that we have. So we develop the people we have, and we attract the people that we want and make the right investments in our people. But you don't know what you don't know. So as that tall order for HR organizations is still out there, that we have to reduce all employee-related costs and we have to help outpace the competition. We don't know how to do this because we don't have the information. The information is provided by assessment tools like PXT Select because it helps you identify the right people for the right positions. The right people in the right positions are fully engaged and they're high performing. So you reduce turnover, improve productivity, and you improve retention. Better information, scientific information, is going to lead to better decisions. You're not just basing on your personal bias, you're basing it on data. And when you have better decisions, you have better people, better outcomes, more productivity, less cost, better organizational culture. All right, as I go through the presentation, again, setting the stage, I'm not going to put you on the spot to ask you to answer these questions, but some of these questions are important to ask, at least for yourself. Be honest with yourself. Do you shelter toxic leaders? Do you have the right people in the right positions? Maybe some positions you do, others you don't. Do your managers even know how to lead? Perhaps they need some development or training. How strong is your organizational culture? Do you live the core values of the organization? Or do you just have them printed in pretty font and put on the wall in the lobby? Two different things. Are you having real conversations with your people as opposed to having these transactional conversations? And so on. Why we're having the conversation about measuring people is because people are complicated. I always say people are like icebergs. 10% is the tip of the iceberg, is what you see when through day-to-day interactions and even through interviews. And even when you work with somebody side by side for many years, and even your friends, I would challenge you to think about this because we really don't know people. What is below the water surface, the 90% of the total person, is what you don't see. That typically shows up later when we're stressed out, when we're not at our best. But it's not necessarily the bad stuff that comes out. Could be the potential that was never leveraged and it showed up and a person stepped up. Like we've seen so many great people identify their greatness and step up to the plate during COVID. You don't build a company, you build people, and then people build your company. I love that quote. So going through the scenario, you've probably been in this scenario as a hiring manager. This is Ben. In March, we interviewed him. He had a great resume, impressive background, interviewed really well, seemed, based on my intuition, seemed like could be a good fit. So we hired him as a new sales manager only by July to come to find out that he prefers to work alone. He's slow, inaccurate with numbers and data. And so now we're faced with a situation where we need to either invest in a lot of coaching, training, and development for Ben, or we need to let him go. And neither one situation is very costly. The other one is just as costly and less pleasant. Predictors of success, what we did not measure with Ben early on, did not measure thinking style, how well he adapts to change, how well he learns, the style and speed of learning, the behavioral traits, the quirks of personality, let's be honest, and of course the motivational factors, the interests. PXT Select measures all of that stuff that's going on under the water surface, the 90% of the total person, and provides in-depth, objective, comprehensive, and reliable information about your people. So you can learn more about yourself and learn about the people all around you. Sometimes I refer to it as a user guide for every person, including yourself. And not only that, it doesn't just measure you on these parameters, but it also gives you actionable reports so that you can take that information and run with it. It gives you bullet point information about questions to ask during the interview, coaching comments, and how to work better with a particular individual. So the way PXT works, it's the same assessment for every person that takes it, but because what we're after is somebody's DNA, occupational DNA. What makes this person tick, that 90% below the water surface, their thinking style, behavioral traits, and interests. The only variance in questions will be due to the computer adaptive testing process that we employ, that in that process, you may be asked a slightly different question compared to somebody who took the assessment before you. It's based on the previous responses that you gave to the assessment. We also have the capacity to evaluate what is required in the position. When we build those custom benchmarks of success for each position and then match the person who took the assessment, that's where the magic happens. Put one over the other, we can map individual scores over what the position requires. And that's what's going to tell us about the job match. But beyond the job match, because PXT is so sophisticated and it has 20 traits on a scale from 1 to 10, neither one being good or bad, the number of possible outcomes, number of possible permutations or combinations of traits is over 10 trillion. By comparison, if you have experience utilizing personality tests, which PXT is not a personality test, it's a normed assessment. But if you have experience with personality tests such as DISC, Myers-Briggs, or predictive index, they have a number of possible outcomes with DISC is 16, Myers-Briggs is 32. So when you start to talk about the level of sophistication with PXT Select, that's as close as you can get to capturing somebody's occupational DNA, or what we call a fingerprint. It really tells us who the person is and measures the uniqueness of the individual. What PXT measures, what are those 20 traits? We have 5 cognitive measures that tell us about the speed and style of learning. Again, it just depends on the position, what you're looking for. Neither one is good or bad. There's different styles. There's auditory and visual learners, for example. We have a measure of vocabulary, verbal reasoning, and abstract thinking, numerical calculation ability, problem solving, and reasoning ability as well. On the behavioral side, we have 9 behavioral traits that tell us a little bit more about their pace of work. Are they detail-oriented, or do they have a great sense of urgency? What is their level and ability to exhibit assertive behavior, their tendency? Are they pretty social, outgoing, or are they reserved? Conformity, outlook, are they positive, or are they vigilant and ask a lot of questions? How they make decisions, how quickly, and how much risk are they willing to take on associated with decision making? Again, different positions are going to require different levels. We have accommodation. Are they confronting situations head on, or do they beat around the bush and they go along with the team for the sake of going along with the team? Are they self-resourceful, independent, or are they reliant on structure? And finally, judgment, that measures intuition versus factual decision making and how the person processes information. We also have 6 motivational interests that go from creative to technical. Creative is any creative outlet. Perhaps they have a hobby outside of work that involves creative pursuits. Enterprising, persuading others, presenting ideas. Financial, administrative, business operations. People service, where people are motivated by those in helping those in need. And finally, mechanical, working with tools. And technical, finally, is solving complex problems and focusing on complex data research. So what makes PXT unique? We will go through this, and then I will show you a real life scenario application of PXT, and I'll show you snippets of different reports. So it really will give you a good, quick overview of what PXT can do. So what makes it unique, as I already mentioned, it really measures the uniqueness of each individual. Instead of putting people in buckets, and nothing wrong with buckets or categories or assigning them colors or letters, nothing wrong with that. It's just on the hiring side is not a valid application. It measures the uniqueness of every individual. It has unsurpassed validity and reliability and accuracy due to computer adaptive testing technology that was recently implemented by Wiley, which is the assessment publisher, and then one of my vendors for assessments. It's validated in accordance with US Department of Labor standards for pre-employment specifically. As I mentioned, personality testing is not valid for use in pre-employment, and PXT is, because it's a normed assessment. It's easy to use, it's easy to implement. You can be up and running in about 24 hours. One assessment generates multiple reports included in the same cost, and custom job performance models are also included in the cost. We can create custom models for your jobs, for your culture, for your organization, or we can use some benchmarks from our library. It is very cost effective because of that. When you maximize the value of PXT throughout employees' life cycle, I say from hire to retire, and implement those insights from hiring process to onboarding, career pathings, and even all the way to succession planning and development, you really can maximize the value. So it's very cost effective. It measures distortion, which is consistency of the responses. We want to be sure that we can trust the results of the assessment. Actionable reports, which I will share with you in just a moment. It provides a great candidate experience. It is an online evaluation. It does take about 45 minutes to an hour to complete, to go through the full assessment. However, it can be split into 2 portions and administered in 2 sittings. It's administered through a secure assessment portal that is branded for each client. So when they log in, they see that it looks like it's coming from your company. And of course, training, validation studies, and continuous ongoing support. We, as assessment experts, PXT experts, are truly invested in making this program a success in your organization, because I've seen it work. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I don't expect you to read the information in this slide. I just want to show that there's 13 different reports available that come with the assessment. Not all of them are going to be used on pre-employment, obviously, but you can utilize it throughout any time you want. So walking through a typical scenario, this is actually a real one. I had a candidate, and this was my only candidate because unfortunately, as many of you can identify, for some reason, I don't get as many candidates anymore. So where I used to have 5 candidates for a position, in this case, I only had Camilla. And there's nothing wrong with Camilla. It's just the job that she applied for. When I assessed her, I looked at the job match. Her job match was not great. It was 67% overall fit. And we typically say 85% plus is when an individual is going to work out as a top performer. So what you're seeing on the screen is her individual scores are the letters CL, her initials, and then the shaded area represents the job requirements. And where she scored outside, that's where she got dinged on her overall match, overall fit with the position. We report on thinking style fit, behavioral traits fit, and interest fit, and then provide the overall fit. But my recommendation always, and it's a best practice, is to look beyond the percent match. People are not just numbers. The assessment is only 1/3 of your decision. So now as a hiring manager, I need to put on my thinking cap and use this as it's intended. It's a piece of data. It's a piece of information, 1/3 of my decision. However, it's very scientific, 1/3, so I can then take this information and move into my interview to address some of those gaps that I see I'm concerned about. You're going to be presented with 2 questions, interview questions, for each of the areas that are measured. But first, you are presented with challenge areas, 3 challenge areas for this job fit, and 3 areas of strength, because we always want to talk about talents and see if maybe we can enhance the talents and leverage the talents that the person brings to the table so as to mitigate some of the risks associated with where they're a little more challenged, different from the job that from the benchmark and what the job requires. So what I found during the interview is that, number one, she's very well spoken and she's very self-aware. So she's already thought about some of the challenges associated with her behavioral traits, and she's come up with some strategies to mitigate those challenges. So my job as a hiring manager is my coaching job is pretty much halfway done, because she's already self-aware. I don't have to build awareness. I don't have to tell her something that she's never been aware of, that she's going to potentially become defensive about. So that was a big plus. The next thing I need to do after the interview is, well, I need to make a decision. I still have an option to hire or not to hire her, but because I need somebody in the role, I need to know what it's going to take of me as a hiring manager to manage and coach this individual. So I'm going to generate a coaching report. Now, typically a coaching report is generated for performance management purposes or during onboarding, but hey, it's available. You can run it anytime. And what I like about this coaching report is the way that it's structured. And I'm just showing you just a couple of snippets. It's a full report that presents you with bullet point and management tip information on all of the traits that we measure on PXT. So it's going to tell me what I need to know about Camilla, what's the bottom line, and the management tips. Once again, these are those actionable items that I was talking about. And because it's a small team, and because I know myself as a leader, I have kind of a quirky personality myself. My traits, I have a very strong personality, I should say. So, and Camilla is going to report to me. So it's very important to me to understand what's going to be that interpersonal dynamic between myself and Camilla. So I'm putting myself on the spot here because that's my real scores. And Camilla's scores. U is me, CL is Camilla. It looks at 9 behavioral traits and presents information in the manager-employee report to tell me how we can work better together. So I can see that I have a great sense of urgency. I chase shiny objects. So maybe her ability to focus on details a little bit more and being patient is actually a positive in this relationship. We can complement each other. But the key is I have to talk to her about it. I have to show this information to her and say, look, I have this really strong trait. I like to move from one thing to the next. And I may, some things may fall through the cracks. I need somebody who's going to be more patient with details, and it's going to be okay. We're similar in assertiveness and sociability. On conformity, I am always coming up with new ideas, new ways to be more efficient, and she's very compliant. She's like a train that runs on tracks. So note for me, as a leader, I need to ensure that I show her and tell her what to do and how it needs to be done. And conversely, I could use her as almost an anchor for my crazy ideas, because she can show me the value of a process. Maybe it's okay not to reinvent the wheel every week. Let's do it maybe once a month. I am also extremely skeptical and vigilant. I ask a lot of questions, not to question somebody, but it's just how I'm wired. She may perceive this as being negative. So again, this is something that needs to be addressed very early in the process. And she's much more trusting and optimistic. And it's always encouraging for skeptical people to surround themselves with more optimistic and trusting people, because they believe in others more than others believe in themselves. Could be a very powerful experience. On decisiveness, we're fairly similar, although she is higher on decisiveness. So maybe she can challenge me and ask me, well, what's the worst that can happen if we move forward with this process or with this decision much quicker? I am also strong on the steadfast side, non-accommodating side. This means that I'm going to handle situations early on, head on, while she prefers harmony. She might avoid conflict. So she needs to know when I sort of come down on her about something, or confront her about something, I'm not trying to be mean. It's just how I'm wired. And the reason behind me following this process, we can get to the resolution faster. So when she knows the reasoning, the intent behind why and how I interact and act, she's not going to take these things personally. On independence, I'm much more autonomous. So I need to know that I need to provide her with feedback. And we're pretty similar on judgment, very intuitive. So everything I just said is actually laid out in the content of the report, the rest of the pages of the report, how to work better together, your tendencies versus the other person's tendencies. So it's a very powerful report that can be, again, generated before you make a hiring decision or after the hiring decision is made and you are engaging in those deep, meaningful conversations during onboarding. Once Camilla is hired, I want to ensure that I keep her. I don't want to go through this process again because she's offered, $2 more across the street and off she goes. We really want to ensure that she stays with us. So I need to show her her potential career growth. I can take her scores and match her against all positions in our company. And in this example, I kind of ran her against really random positions. But I can then sit down with her and talk about her strengths, where she could go next. We can then decide where we can spend our training dollars. Maybe she wants to go and acquire a couple of skills, and then she can be compensated for those skills. But she knows that we see value in what she brings to the table. She feels appreciated. And more importantly, she sees herself with us long term. And I don't even have to have a conversation about, oh, stay with us for a month and then we're going to pay you a stay bonus. That's not even part of this conversation. We're having a more meaningful conversation where she can see it's not transactional. Okay. Next thing that we do, and a lot of my clients started doing this when this retention topic became so important, is in the first 2 weeks, they schedule, and that's what I did with Camilla, schedule a long lunch with the team that Camilla is going to be working with. In this case, it's a very small team of 4 people. And we're going to talk through this team report, discussing our differences and similarities. You can see our team is very different on pace. We have one person on the steady side, very patient and methodical. Camilla is in the middle, and 2 people on the urgent side. So how can we complement each other and not perceive our differences as difficulties? It's super critical, because when you don't know why the person is doing what they're doing, you start to tell yourself a story. And it's usually not the right story. And it's usually to the negative for the person. It's like you're telling yourself a negative story. So you need to know that that's just how the person is. And then you don't take things personally. And we can really focus on productive collaboration, productive cooperation, and complementing each other. Because when you work on a complementary team, individual weaknesses become irrelevant. If you really think about how powerful that statement is, and you have a powerful tool to measure this scientifically and present you with actionable insights to have this conversation, individual weaknesses become irrelevant when you work on a complementary team. So how do we complement each other? And now she walks out of that conversation feeling like she knows all of us at the very deep level, because she gets like a user guide for each person that she's working with. And that's the report that I get from all of my clients that use this as part of onboarding. The new team members that go through this process say that they feel like they've known the team for 2 years, not 2 weeks. So you can squeeze your onboarding from 6 months to 2 weeks when it comes to people and understanding your people. So you feel connected to the team and you feel engaged. And again, there's narrative there for each of the traits that we measure, points to consider how to leverage each other's strengths on the team. There's a couple of other reports, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about them. I just wanted to show you where PXT can be used beyond the job match, beyond the interview, which is really typical when we're having a conversation about talent assessments on the hiring side. So it can be, you can leverage the value of this information throughout employee's life cycle beyond the hire. Implementation is very easy. We identify key positions. Maybe we do a talent audit or a job study, and you can do this right now. Again, we can get you up and running within 24 hours. We can build custom performance models or use a library of benchmarks. You can use, then assess candidates and incumbents. You can actually assess top performers to see what makes them tick. And then you can use that information to essentially clone your top people in a scientific way as you start to hire more people. And then match them to jobs. And please use all those reports to make the most informed decisions as possible. Some of the best practices for implementing PXT: always administer consistently and as early as in the process as possible. But it's no more than 1/3 of your decision. It is not a magic bullet. Utilize the reports. I always say assessing them doesn't make them better. You actually have to read the reports and use the reports. So administer before the interview if it's a hiring situation, so that you can use those interview questions during the interview. There are no good or bad scores. You can't fail who you are. Remember, we measure who the person is, their DNA, and then we want to put them in the right position according to their talents. Always look beyond percentage matches or beyond individual scores. Do not reassess. People don't change, and we can have a separate conversation about that. People actually change what they do, but they don't change who they are. Pay attention to the distortion statement, and of course, contact me. We do training, answer questions, track ROI. We really want you to be successful in using this program, and use us as a resource. Even if you don't use our assessments or our coaching services, we might be able to point you in the right direction. All right, so I'm going to unmute and see if we have any questions. Any questions, guys? All right, well, the one thing I forgot to mention is everybody who participated on this demo will receive an opportunity to experience PXT for free. So your complimentary PXT will be scheduled shortly. You can go through the assessment, which again takes about 45 minutes to an hour to complete, and it's all online. And then once you are done with it, we can get together and I will be happy to debrief you and kind of walk through, answer any questions that you may have one-on-one. Thank you so much. Have a great day.